The Saints Row reboot has been a fail for Volition, it seems like, especially after Embracer's CEO came out and admitted he was disappointed with the backlash. We saw the physical sales in the UK dropped 80% only a week after launch, yet the news only gets worse for them because the game couldn't even beat Grand Theft Auto 5 in its launch month for sales. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month, or support the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So this is an article by Game Rant. It says Grand Theft Auto 5 outsold the new Saints Row in Europe last month, and it is important to point out that that was launch month for this title. The recently released Saints Row reboot hasn't been performing as well as the publisher Deep Silver and the parent company Embracer Group would have certainly wanted. While the game has risen towards the top of the charts, it failed to get over the most important hurdle, dethroning Saints Row 1 and perhaps only significant rival, Grand Theft Auto. I mean, yeah, Saints Row was initially created to be a Grand Theft Auto competitor. They have been competing for years and years at this point, and apparently the new Saints Row reboot can't even compete against a almost decade-old Grand Theft Auto 5. It says the figures from the European game sales data reveal that Saints Row took the second spot only after Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, of course, it is a little bit unfair to compare these two because Grand Theft Auto 5 is one of the best-selling games ever. It is constantly selling copies, but at the same time, you would think that a major release like a Saints Row reboot would at least outsell a Grand Theft Auto for a single month, and it can't. I think if the Saints Row reboot came out and it was a actually fantastic Saints Row game, it could have probably dethroned Grand Theft Auto 5 for a month, but it just couldn't. I mean, this game was surrounded in controversy. People were furious at the changes that they made to the franchise and just the general direction that they went in, and it's not very surprising to see that it couldn't even dethrone Grand Theft Auto 5. I've talked quite a lot about the Saints Row reboot on the channel, and I personally was very disappointed with it. As someone who has played every Saints Row game, and I've loved the franchise, I decided ultimately to not purchase the Saints Row reboot because it didn't feel like a Saints Row reboot to me. I just didn't want to support it. It didn't look entertaining, and well, they lost a sale from someone who they've previously gotten many sales from. It says Saints Row is the reboot of the 2006 action-adventure under the same name, which was considered the only rival of the open-world kind that could challenge Grand Theft Auto. Deep Silver published the reboot almost exactly a month ago and immediately was compared to both the current and upcoming GTA games. Of course they're going to be. I mean, again, as this article points out, Saints Row and Grand Theft Auto have always been in competition. Of course, this is where this game journalist instantly starts to simp for this title. While the reception hasn't been great, some online critics have disingenuously claimed Saints Row looks worse than a half-baked GTA 6. I completely agree with that. I think that this game looked terrible. I think that there was nothing about it that drew me in. It looked very mediocre. It looked like a game that should have been released 10 years ago at this point. But according to the game's sales data, Saints Row took second on the chart. On the surface, this doesn't look like a bad placement. After all, Spider-Man Remastered was also released in August on PC and only managed to get 6th on the list. However, there was really only one game Saints Row was aiming for, Grand Theft Auto 5, and unfortunately for Saints Row, GTA 5 had an amazing month in Europe and was able to beat Saints Row for the top spot. It is evident that GTA 5 is still going strong as gamers wait for its successor. Not everything is as bad for Saints Row as even the Embracer CEO's comments can be interpreted. The game was released on the 23rd, so while the August data shows the initial launch spike, it only includes approximately a week of sales, but you would think that that would be enough to overthrow something like Grand Theft Auto, that would be enough time for a AAA game that is just coming out versus a almost decade-old game. But unfortunately for Volition and also Embracer, this game never really got off the ground because the physical sales dropped 80% in the UK a mere week after it launched. We see a lot of drops, obviously. I mean, the longer a product is out, the more the sales are going to drop. But this game dropped 80% in the UK in a week, which is a giant percent. It says the Saints Row Reboot had reportedly seen an 80% drop in physical sales in the UK the week after it launched, tumbling down the charts. It was also outsold by The Last of Us Part 1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga Collection, and F1 Manager 2022, and of course, we also now know Grand Theft Auto 5. And the original article also talks about the Embracer CEO. This was from a couple of days ago. It says, Saints Row launched to a rather poor reception, settling into about a 64 top critic average and overall weak rating on aggregate site OpenCritic. Embracer Group's CEO recently spoke to investors about the poor reviews of Saints Row. It says, acknowledging that Saints Row has a polarized fan base, as some enjoy it well enough for dumb fun while others criticize it up and down, he said that he's a bit sad that not as many fans of the franchise are happy. After all, this franchise has a long history, and while the first two Saints Row games established it as a competitor to GTA, SR3 and SR4 broke off with their own identity that in of itself was polarizing. He says there is quite a lot that could be said about its reception, but it would be best to wait for November's quarterly report for a full picture. Now, of course, it's safe to assume that that quarterly report isn't going to paint a pretty picture for them and that this game probably didn't make a lot of money, but they tried something. The developers went on social media and said, we're proud of what we're creating. If you don't like it, don't buy it. We're not creating games for, people like you. And ultimately, I think that they got what they wanted. People didn't buy their game just because of, brand recognition, just because fans are dedicated to purchasing a title from a franchise like this. If they had went into this trying to make a game as close as possible to the original Saints Row title and they tried to listen to fan feedback, this title would have sold way better. But unfortunately for them, it seems like this game is a massive failure at this point, and it was even outsold by Grand Theft Auto. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed it and found it important and informative, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.